All right, let's be real for a second.
Mm.
You're in advertising, you're in marketing, you get it. The information overload is crazy.
hmm
And there's this constant pressure, right, to not just keep up, but to be ahead of the game. So that's a lot to handle.
Totally. It's like
Yeah.
a fire hose of trends, data, insights, and you're trying to sift through it all and figure out what actually matters. So that's why, we're doing these deep dives.
We are, right. It's all about taking something fascinating, some interesting source material, and really pulling out like those key insights that can shift your thinking, can spark some new ideas in your daily work. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like finding those little nuggets of gold that can really make a difference in your approach to marketing and advertising. And today's source material is particularly interesting. We're diving into the Chaos Club newsletter. Have you heard of this?
The Chaos Club, oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's like stepping into a world of, people who are actively shaking things up. They're embracing the unexpected. They're the ones pushing the boundaries in our industry. It's not about rehashing old trends. It's about creating the next ones.
Exactly. And that's why we were so drawn to it. This newsletter is like a window into a community that's constantly questioning, experimenting, and pushing the boundaries of what's possible in marketing and advertising. And that's something we can all learn from, right?
Oh, for sure. And just the name itself, Chaos Club, it's got this energy to it. It's like, what kind of unconventional wisdom are they uncovering? So our aim with this deep dive, right, is to explore this newsletter, pull out those actionable ideas, new ways of seeing things, maybe even tap into some of that chaos ourselves, right, to spark some fresh thinking in our own work.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it? To get inspired, to challenge our assumptions, and maybe even steal a few brilliant ideas along the way.
Oh, definitely stealing some ideas.
Yeah.
I'm all for that. But before we get into the specifics, I have to say, diving into this Chaos Club world has been, I don't know, it's been invigorating. There's this palpable energy that jumps off the page, right? Like a real commitment to challenging the norms.
It is. It really feels like a community of people who are genuinely excited about what's next and aren't afraid to experiment to get there. And you can see that right from the start, even just in the way the newsletter itself is structured. It's like they're embracing a certain level of, well, chaos, even in their own presentation.
Right. It's not your typical neatly packaged newsletter, that's for sure.
Yeah.
In fact, they even mentioned a constellation of over 4,000 collected insights. 4,000! Like that number alone is pretty mind-blowing.
Right. It suggests a huge active community constantly sharing and discovering. I mean, 4,000 insights, that's a lot of brain power churning away. What was your initial reaction to that sheer volume of information?
It was like, wow, okay, this is a serious operation. This isn't just a casual newsletter. This is like a hub, a collective brain trust. And for me, it really reinforces that sense of a dynamic, constantly evolving community, which makes it even more exciting to dive into some of their specific reports and insights.
Yeah. Right. Let's get into the meat of it. And one report in particular stood out to us. The 10 impredictions. It's their take on trend forecasting, but with a twist.
The 10 impredictions. Okay, I love that already. It's like they're saying, forget predicting the future. Let's focus on the now.
Exactly. It's about being present, adaptable, ready to pivot. And, for anyone in advertising or marketing, that resonates, right? The landscape is constantly shifting. We have to be agile.
Oh, absolutely. You can't get stuck in those long-term plans that are outdated before they're even finished. So being responsive, nimble. And that's precisely what this report emphasizes, this idea of inhabiting the now.
And it sounds like the Chaos Club members themselves got quite an experience during the presentation of this report. The newsletter describes it as an OVNI, which is French for, well, it translates to unidentified flying object.
An OVNI, a UFO. Okay, that definitely piques my curiosity. Like, what kind of presentation warrants that kind of description? It must have been pretty out there.
Well, we can only speculate, but it clearly made an impact. And one example from that presentation really stuck with us, and that's Sid Lee's camping move.
Sid Lee, the agency. What did they do? Take their entire team on a retreat?
Not quite, but it's almost as unexpected. Imagine this. Your agency's big relocation, something you've been planning for ages, suddenly hits a snag. The new space isn't ready. Delays, frustration, all those boxes packed up, nowhere to go.
Oh, the worst. You've already mentally moved in, you've probably picked out your new desk chair, and then bam, indefinite delay.
Exactly. But here's where Sid Lee took an unexpected turn. Instead of getting bogged down in the negativity, they embraced the situation and turned several floors of their existing building into, wait for it, a campground.
A campground in their office. Okay, that's pretty creative. But like actual tents and sleeping bags.
Well, we don't have all the details, but the newsletter mentions creative design elements and objects that really embrace this camping spirit. It wasn't just a makeshift solution, it was a statement.
That's what's so cool about it. They took a potentially frustrating situation and turned it into a positive reflection of their company culture. You can imagine the team bonding over this unexpected adventure, the stories they'll tell.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just internal morale. It's a story that spreads, a testament to their adaptability and creative problem solving.
For sure. It's a great example of turning a setback into an opportunity.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, right, when those inevitable challenges pop up, how can you reframe them? How can you use them to showcase your team's resilience, to strengthen your company culture? It's about finding that silver lining, even in the chaos.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another fascinating example from the newsletter, and it's a bit of a shift in gears. The Brat phenomenon, specifically surrounding Charlie XCX's latest album.
Okay, Pratt, I'm intrigued. What's the connection here?
Well, this is where we get into the territory of challenging aesthetic norms. The visual style of the Brat album is deliberately jarring, with stark green screens and typography that's, well, let's just say it's unconventional.
Unconventional, okay. In today's world of perfectly polished visuals, that's definitely a bold move.
It is, and you'd think in this hyper-curated online world that something so rough around the edges would just get lost, right? But it did the opposite. It blew up, became a cultural talking point.
Huh. It's like intentionally embracing that imperfection caught people's attention.
Exactly. And there's a definition of brat from Le Parisien that really gets to the heart of it. It says, to be audacious, to take risks, and to accept what is uncomfortable. It's being nervous, imperfect, and confident.
I love that. It's like a rejection of that constant pressure to present a perfect image.
Right. And the newsletter author, Illa D, makes a key point. Brat breaks the rules not by tweaking them, but by seemingly ignoring them altogether.
That's a bold move, especially in advertising, right? We're so obsessed with seamless branding and perfect narratives, and here comes Brad just throwing that all out the window.
Yeah. It does make you wonder, though, in this saturated world of meticulously produced content, could embracing a degree of cultural chaos offer a refreshing alternative? When is it beneficial to lean into imperfection, to challenge those aesthetic norms?
It's a tricky line to walk, though, isn't it? You don't want to come across as unprofessional or sloppy.
Absolutely. It requires a deep understanding of your target audience and the cultural context. What might be edgy and authentic to one group could be off-putting to another.
Right, so it's not just about being chaotic for the sake of it. It's about being strategic, knowing when and how to disrupt expectations effectively. It's a fascinating concept to consider, especially as we're developing campaigns. Okay, let's move on to another brand that caught our eye in the newsletter, Vacation.Inc. They describe it as a hidden gem, and it sounds like it's playing with that idea of disruption in a really interesting way.
It is, and it's a brilliant example of using juxtaposition to create something memorable. Vacation.Inc. deliberately adopts the look and feel of 1980s corporate culture and applies it to leisure products. So, think sunscreen named Chardonnay, and even floating bikes, all with this very serious, buttoned-up tone.
Okay, hold on. Sunscreen called Chardonnay. That's amazing.
I-
It's so unexpected. I love it.
It's this clash of two worlds that you wouldn't normally associate. The rigid structure of corporate life and the carefree spirit of leisure. And it's that clash that makes them stand out.
Totally. It's like, wait, what's going on here? It
Yeah.
makes you stop and pay attention.
Exactly. It sparks curiosity, starts conversations, and that's a valuable lesson for any brand, especially in a crowded market. How can you play with seemingly contradictory concepts to create something unique and memorable?
It's about finding that sweet spot where the unexpected isn't just random, it actually enhances the brand's message or personality.
Right. It's about using surprise strategically to create an emotional connection or spark a particular feeling.
So Vacation.Inc., they're definitely a brand to keep an eye on. Now, the newsletter takes a little detour with a lighthearted question of the week before moving on to a more serious topic. The idea of found family.
Yes, the question of the week is a fun little interlude, but the found family discussion is where things get really interesting.
Right. And it touches on a significant societal shift, right? The idea that traditional family structures are evolving and people are actively seeking out and creating their own support networks in unconventional ways.
Exactly. The newsletter points to the rise of surrogate grandparent groups on platforms like Facebook, where people are connecting across generations to fulfill that need for connection and belonging.
It's fascinating. And it presents a real opportunity for brands, doesn't it?
Right.
How can we tap into this desire for community, for belonging, in a way that goes beyond traditional demographics?
Exactly. It's about understanding those fundamental human needs and finding authentic ways to connect with people based on shared values, interests, experiences. It's about building communities that transcend traditional boundaries.
So much potential there. Okay, moving on. The newsletter then talks about an experience at the Chaosmos exhibition at the Maeve Social Club, focusing on what they call les objets trouvés, or found objects.
Yeah, and it sounds like it was a really thought-provoking exhibition. Two pieces in particular were highlighted. The first were these bricks, sculpted by Vincent Marger, but here's the twist. He used a chainsaw.
A chainsaw to sculpt bricks. That's an interesting choice.
It is, and it's precisely that unexpected combination that makes it so powerful. The newsletter describes it as an original way to open our gaze and our imagination by subverting the traditional function of everyday objects.
I can see that. It's like taking something familiar and forcing you to see it in a completely new light.
Exactly. And the second piece was this meteorite installation by Veronique Ballon. When you interact with it, it triggers these cryptic messages drawn from radio telescope data. The examples they give are really intriguing, very poetic and mysterious.
Wow. So it's like you're communicating with the cosmos, getting these random snippets of information. That's pretty wild.
It is. And the newsletter author talks about being fascinated by this element of mystery, surprise, and randomness.
Which is a great reminder, right? That sometimes the most engaging experiences are those that embrace the unexpected. And it doesn't have to be on a grand cosmic scale.
Right. The newsletter even mentions Burger King's Mystery Burger as a more down-to-earth example of using surprise to generate buzz.
Okay, so maybe not everyone has access to a meteorite, but the principle is the same. It's
Yeah.
about incorporating elements of chance, of unpredictability, to create a more memorable experience.
Exactly. It's about breaking away from the predictable, the overly polished, and injecting a bit of mystery and intrigue into your marketing.
Okay, gotta say, this Chaosmos exhibition sounds amazing. I love how these artists are taking everyday objects and turning them into something completely new and thought-provoking. It's like they're actively trying to shake up our perceptions of the world.
It is, and it's that kind of outside-the-box thinking that can be so valuable in our industry, right? It's about challenging assumptions and exploring new possibilities.
Absolutely. I'd love to experience something like that. It seems like the kind of event that would spark all sorts of creative ideas. And speaking of creative inspiration, the newsletter concludes with John Tale's horoscope.
Oh, yes. And this one is particularly direct. It diagnoses the reader with boredom, but not the good kind of boredom. It's the kind where you're just mindlessly scrolling, refreshing pages, feeling stuck.
Oof, that hits a little too close to home. We've all been there.
We have. And the prescribed antidote, déconnecter. Disconnect. Get away from the screens, get outside, move your body, experience the real world.
A digital detox. Sounds like a good idea.
It does. And the newsletter even mentions an app in development that blocks social media until you physically go outside.
Okay, that's clever. A little extreme maybe, but it gets the point across.
It does. And it ties into the next concept that's highlighted, micro-adventures. The newsletter references Alistair Humphreys, this adventurer who's done incredible expeditions all over the world. But then he shifted his focus to exploring his own local area, finding adventure in the everyday.
I love that. It's about appreciating what's right in front of you, finding those hidden gems.
Exactly. And there's a quote from another adventurer, Ricky Gates, that really sums it up. In the end, I think that a single mountain range is enough exploration for an entire lifetime.
Wow, that's beautiful. It's about shifting your perspective, realizing that adventure can be found anywhere.
Exactly. And the newsletter highlights Thibault Lebay and his media platform, Chillaway, as a great example of promoting this local exploration. They have articles, an interactive map of unique places to stay, even a travel agency focused on nearby adventures.
So they're making it easy for people to get out there and explore. I love that.
They are. And then there's Patrick Fagan, who takes this idea of surprise yourself to a whole new level. His strategy, do one new thing every week, no matter how outlandish.
One new thing every week, huh? That could be anything from trying a new restaurant to, I don't know, learning to juggle chainsaws.
Well, his examples are a bit more extreme. He mentions things like corresponding with a serial killer and exploring BDSM communities.
Okay, that's definitely pushing the boundaries.
It is. But the underlying principle is solid. Disrupt your routine, expose yourself to new things, and you'll inevitably gain new perspectives.
It's about challenging yourself, getting out of your comfort zone, and Honestly, I'm starting to feel a little bit of FOMO just hearing about all these amazing people and experiences.
Right. And to make matters worse, the newsletter mentions that Fagan is actually doing a masterclass with the Chaos Club. 10 lucky subscribers even got a chance to win a spot.
Ugh, the FOMO is real.
Yeah.
Seriously, the more we delve into this Chaos Club, the more I'm convinced it's like the ultimate think tank for anyone in our industry.
It really does seem like an incredible community. And it's not just about the information and the events, it's the mindset, right? It's about embracing curiosity, challenging conventions, and constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a moment to reflect on some key themes that have emerged. We've seen the power of embracing unpredictability, of being adaptable in the face of challenges, like Sid Lee did with their camping move. We've explored the idea of challenging aesthetic norms, of using disruption strategically to create something memorable and attention-grabbing, like the Brad phenomena. We found inspiration in unexpected places, from 1980s corporate aesthetics to chainsaw-sculpted bricks and cryptic messages from a meteorite, and we've been reminded of the importance of staying curious, of actively combating boredom by seeking out new experiences and challenging our perspectives, something the Chaos Club seems to embody perfectly.
It's a lot to take in, but it's all incredibly valuable, especially for those of us working in advertising and marketing agencies. So for you listening, take a moment to consider how these insights might apply to your own work. How can you introduce a bit more of this chaotic thinking into your strategies and creative processes?
Where might embracing the unconventional lead to a breakthrough for your brand or your clients? What rules might be worth breaking?
It's about asking those questions, challenging the status quo, and staying open to new possibilities.
And honestly, after this deep dive, I'm left feeling energized and inspired. This Chaos Club, they're onto something special.
They are, and it makes you wonder what other unconventional wisdom is out there waiting to be discovered.
Exactly. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and maybe, just maybe, embrace a little bit of chaos along the way.
You never know where it might lead.
You never know. All right, that's it for this deep dive, folks. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.